If garden gnomes are spirits in nature, shouldn't the art reflect that? They're creatures of whimsy and wonder. Shouldn't the art reflect that? Shouldn't the art not just show nature, but make you feel the nature? Like a gnome would? Now personally, I love nature, so that's fine by me. Landscapes are like the one thing I draw. But fantasy creatures usually have a defined art style, usually from Lord of the Rings Tolkien. Dwarves come from Art Deco, elves come from Art Nouveau, humans, come from human stuff. But Tolkien did not brand gnomes well. They actually don't have any similar art theme, any motif, no sharing motifs throughout media, except being sort of nature guys. But what art style should we use? For this challenge, I'm going all in on post-impressionism. I think the loose brushstrokes, the messiness, I think that's perfect for gnomes. I'm Jackie, I'm making a game about garden gnomes. It's called Garden Guardians. You play as garden gnome, grow and guard garden, guard it against bugs. No, please. Yo.
Grow it. Get the wood. You need 3. Oh, you're cheating? What?
No.
So in the last devlog, we had just made the trees. I really want to focus on making the outside look more like outside. I downloaded some ground covering, but I want to make my own. Now I made those trees in a program called Treeit, but I really want to learn Speed Tree. So I quickly designed something that I know I'm gonna not use. So that I'm not worried about the end product, I'm more just looking for reference. So I know the shape language does not fit the rest of the game. I also see that it's too big. So I'm gonna go back to the drawing board and I'm just gonna start again. So I'm gonna reintroduce that spiral motif from before. I'm also gonna change the texture to be big and blotchy. I'm gonna see how that works. So if you don't know, Impressionism is an art movement that comes from Paris, and it came during a time of really quick urbanization without the integration or regard of the natural environment. And so a lot of the artists, a lot of the painters, they went to nature and they were like, oh, I love the nature. And they painted it and they were like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And it really romanticizes nature. It's very quick and colorful. It tries to capture light over a period of time, so everything's a little messy looking. Now, Impressionism has a lot of movement. It's very energetic. It's very representative. It symbolizes nature. But post-impressionism, post-impressionism. Post-impressionism is a movement that came after, but that's when you get the really heavy hitters, like my boy, Vincent van Gogh. Now, it might be cliche, but Vinny Van Guinea, now he's my favorite painter. Now, I have to be honest. I'll be honest on my own channel. He's so good. His brushstrokes are just so 3D. Watch Loving Vincent. That's my favorite movie. Watch Loving Vincent. Post-impressionism obviously takes a lot of inspiration from impressionism, but it focuses more on internal symbolism. Now, it's typically abstract, a bit more abstract than impressionism. There's also usually a lot of swirls and movement, but swirls are kind of like the focal point. But that was an expression of that artist. Now, you can definitely pull inspiration, but how do you find reflection and expression of your internal artist?
Ralph Waldo Emerson. See, I was named after Emerson. That's why it's Jack E. E stands for Emerson. And in 1836, he wrote this book. Turns out they had writing even back then. Emerson argues that nature is the simplest truth, that all language derives from nature in our needing to explain nature. We needed the word bear to describe the bear coming towards us. He argues that words are symbols for the natural world, and the natural world is how we derive our thoughts and concepts. We associate cunning with foxes, not because foxes are necessarily cunning, but we derive our concept of cunning from foxes. Now that sounds really cool, but how do we use that?
In terms of finding our own artistic expression, your art style is essentially a language you are developing for expressing your own perspective authentically within that moment in which you are creating. Now that sounds awesome. You always hear, art advice of like, speak your authentic truth, whatever. But it's hard to do that if you have a hard time being aware of what your unique perspective on the human condition actually is. But because Emerson is arguing language and thoughts and concepts are derived from your natural environment, whether that's sticks and bugs, or if that's concrete and the guy breakdancing in the subway. Your everyday natural environment is filled with symbols that would reflect your internal mind, because your internal mind is a reflection of the outside environment. So then, to find your art style, maybe try going outside in the meditative state and start reflecting on the things around you and what it reminds you about yourself. If the graffiti on the wall really excites me, I'm gonna reflect on what part of myself it symbolizes, and I'm gonna intentionally use it in my project that way.
Now, Emerson has one of my favorite quotes. Who can look at a river in a meditative hour and not be reminded of the flux of all things? Now, this isn't a river. This is more of a stream. Ooh. Nah, just playing. But I think the analogy still works. Because the stream now is not the same stream as it is now. All the water's different. All the water's moved. It's a different stream. And even now it's a different stream. Everything is always moving.
So let's look at a tree. Spruce trees are really enduring, and I'm gonna pull symbols of this tree. Maybe it's the color, maybe it's the texture, to try to convey endurance. Now I can just say the word tree.
That doesn't really capture what a tree could represent. But if I paint a tree, I can capture a few more of the things.
So how do we use that in a project? Well, if we're lost or if we don't really know where to start, we can look to the natural world for symbols and have that emotional context inform our intentional choices of what to do with that object within whatever art project you're working on. So then you have a library of symbols that best represent your perspective.
Emerson once said that art is the creation of man who seeks to express the nature of things.
Now, I really don't know exactly what that quote means, but it sounds good. I don't know what it says about me making a game about garden gnomes for the past few years. Maybe I'm becoming a garden gnome. But I do think post-impressionism works. And if art direction is supposed to point you in the direction of the emotional context of the game, the emotional goal of the game, and in my case, to feel like a garden gnome, I feel like the love of nature, the quick burst of inspiration, the looseness, I think that's pretty good. Now, what's up with rocks these days? Am I right? Where do they even come from? Have you even seen a baby rock? I haven't. I went into Blender and I made a rock randomizer. So essentially, I just have to make simple shapes like cubes or things similar to cubes, and it's gonna auto-rockify it. So I don't have to do a lot of work. Now, tying it back to Emerson's symbolism, what do rocks represent in the terms of a garden? Now, rocks are literally the foundation of what we walk on. Rocks are in the soil. Rocks build pathways. Rocks build fences. They're strong homes, hearths, campfire sites, other gnomes. I think everything promotes a degree of safety, something of strength and protection. Now, the premise of different materials and objects being in the game and being so prevalent within the garden, the player will use the elements of the garden to make their tools and resources to handle any conflict that might come to the garden, whether it's weather, whether it's forces that seek to destroy or pollute the garden, you name it. So if I'm making something out of rocks, because I symbolize rocks with protection and stuff like that, it would be natural to give the player some warrior tank rock-like abilities. And the idea is that if I design it right, then choosing to use rocks for your means of defending will help you understand rocks' functionality within the garden, as well as making you feel like what it symbolizes, whether it's a martial or a caster role. And I'll talk on that later, but right now I want to focus on what's happening on screen. Right now you see a lot of rainbow patterns. What is that? This is called vertex world space. You can see every direction has a color, and where the directions blend, the colors blend. Now here's where it gets a little silly, because I can use that color that it puts out, and I can turn that into a number, and then I can use that number as a variable to control how much it's blending from the top to the bottom. And no matter what rotation, the top will always be this color and the bottom will always be this color. And I can use that for more stylized shadows. But 2 colors per rock might get a little unwieldy. So there's a bit of code to just control the main color, and then automatically it's gonna color the shadow based on how I typically color things. Now, how I like to color, I like to saturate, darken a little bit, but mainly saturate it, and then hue shift it. So if it's a warm color palette, the shadows are gonna be a bit warmer. So if it's an orange, the shadow's gonna be a bit red. So now it's starting to look a bit more like a rock. This is because what's called a normal map. So here I inverted it so you can see just what the normal map does. Normal maps are textures that use the color data of the texture to decide how the surface reacts to lighting. Here I have it cranked up. This is also how a lot of artists will imitate things looking wet. It's because they're really reflective. All right, I think things are looking pretty cool, pretty rocky. Now, one of the biggest inspirations for this game is Dwarf Fortress. Dwarf Fortress, my goat. And Dwarf Fortress has a bunch of different kinds of everything. It has a bunch of different kinds of rocks, bunch of different kinds of trees, and they all do the same thing, but it allows for creative expression from the player depending on what biome you start in, what rocks are around you, and your builds looking like they fit naturally within the environment. I'm gonna plug the normal map straight into the color so you can exactly see what a normal map looks like. Every pixel has an amount of red, green, and blue, and those are different directions of lighting. And I saw a trick where you can make the normal map look all brushy, and then I put that back on the rock, and now it's a bit more brushy looking. I actually use the same technique for the trees. I tested on the tree trunks. That's why they look a little bit brushy. Now, there are a few more things I want to do with the rock. I want to have this texture scale based on the size of the rock, because right now, these were really small rocks that I blew up. So the textures, the brush strokes are going to be way bigger than relative to everything else. Now, I think the game looks pretty cool. But I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit more I can do to make this look like a post-impressionist painting. Maybe the answers are in this rune I found.
And a staff, a wizard's staff of sword, a druid's staff. I think it's only gray quality though, I'll be honest. This looks like a gray quality staff.
Figuring out an art style is one thing, actually implementing it is another. But it's important to do so because Emerson argues that art is a more effective means of communication. And I suck at communication.
And he puts his hands around his face and starts digging out his eyeballs.
Oh my God.
And he goes, fucker,
Oh yeah.
no. Wow. So many people are ignorant. They just
yeah.
don't know anything.
Yeah.
Boy, it is coming. There and get some more water and
Right.
enjoy the day.
Hopefully it passes soon.
Sometimes it makes you a little skittish about staying.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I did not stay. I did not stay at all. You see, conversation scares me a lot. I have a social disability that makes communication really hard for me. I got my loot, you know, I got out unscathed this time. But I feel like talking to people never really works out. I get really stressed out and I can't really express or process kind of emotions in the moment well during conversation, or pick up on invisible subtleties to conversation. That's really hard. Emerson argues that conversation exists to communicate your spirit to another person, but art is a more effective means of doing that. And I would agree. I feel like it's always been much easier to understand my own emotions while channeling art, as well as having other people understand me through art. And I think games are a specific kind of art that is a little special. Not only does it have every medium I can think of that adds its own unique avenue of expressing something, but players gain the emotional experience of the game through interaction, and the controls and game rules shape your lens of how you're able to view the game world. Now let me be honest on the real reason why I'm climbing this mountain. See, I used to work at a coffee shop, and I had a regular that really impacted me.
Dude, that's me. That's me. That's what I look like.
See, once he was helping me write something, and he was a writer, so I'll use it in his words, but he said, the words don't matter, it's what you write about that matters. And I didn't really appreciate the depth of these words until later. He said, you don't make art, the art makes you. Because when you're making authentic art, you're processing things about yourself. And so who you are after every art piece is a different you, much like the river. And if the words don't matter, what you write about matters. If the colors don't matter, what you paint matters. I wanted to come up to this mountain with a few things to paint, and I just wanted to paint what I see. Now I'm using watercolor, which I've never used watercolor before. And I'm painting outside, which I've hardly ever painted outside before. So the colors don't matter. How good it is doesn't matter. What matters is that this painting is capturing my experience of the hike. It's capturing my experience leading up to the hike. How I got here. This mountain is where I was trying to go to in my last devlog, where my car broke down. And it took many months to get a new car. It took many months to learn environment art. But this video is kind of a culmination of that. And during the walk, I got to think about all the things that I went through to get to this moment and making this video. So to explain how I made my game look like a post-impressionistic painting, I want to paint on top of a mountain. Woo!
So basically there's Gaussian blur, which you might know, which that's how you edit photos when you blur it. That formula that it does is called Gaussian. It's a Gaussian blur because the guy who made it was, that was his name. He was named that somehow. And so what that does is that takes a pixel and then it looks at the surrounding pixel and then it kind of blurs it like that. And then it looks really blurry. I'm just using the big boy brush, I've decided, because I just want to blur it all. So then Kuwahara is a different guy who tried to do the same thing. So he also tried to make a blurring filter, but one that kept edges, and he did not do well. But what he did do was make like a kind of like an oil painty filter. And so we call that a Kuwahara filter. So I took the Kuwahara filter and then I did it based on depth. So the farther it is, or wait, how did I do it? Basically, the further something is, the more painted it looks. Because like in painting, you know, it's like the things up closer that's gonna have the more detail. I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna start a different one. I'm gonna start a different one. I've learned. I made mistakes and I've learned, and that's how you learn. I just need to forgive myself. I'm gonna do right here, right behind the camera. Damn, it's cold too, so I gotta be fast. Ooh, there's a storm coming too. I didn't say that before. So Kuwahara, so that's what I did. So basically that's what I did. The end. If you were a gnome, what would be your gnome name? If you were a gnome, where would your gnome house be? Tell me about your gnome. Brrr, I'm on top of a mountain. I'm 8,000 feet up in the air. My gnome's name, I have to think about the name. First of all, where'd my gnome live? I kind of want to be in a big acorn. Or no, you know what? I want to be on a sideways log and it's mossy. I want to be on a mossy log. That's my gnome house. And it's going to have a fireplace. So I'm just doing whatever. I'm just doing whatever, and it doesn't matter. There's no rules. No rules. Government allowed them. Government allowed me to do this. I paid them off. I paid the government off, and I can do whatever I want. I can pay the government off, and I can now do whatever the hell I want. Forget. Right now, I'm just kind of layering greens in a triangular pattern, because I feel like that's what feels right. That's what feels right now. So, consequence of using big boy brush is I have no freaking detail, and that's okay, because I'm going to use this one. Okay. This white boy's kind of cooking. Okay, white boy. Sheesh. Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. Because you got to do things hard so you progress. Just like paint on top of a mountain when it's really cold and I think it's going to thunderstorm on me and I'm going to be struck by lightning. But the thing is, I should have added another tree like this. And that's what I'm doing right now. So now there's a little touch of blue back there, but I want to pull out a little. Yo, I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta go. That's good. No, that's pretty good.
These are the ones I ended up making. I think for my first time doing watercolor, pretty good. This was the view. I think I definitely blended it too much. I need to be careful about that next time. Same with this one for sure. I started a lot more saturated and then I accidentally messed up the colors. This one's definitely my favorite of the three. It is a little hairy because the paintbrush the bristles did fall into the painting, but that's okay. So let's see how these paintings compare to my video game painting. Yeah, that's pretty close. Wait, I am getting word from up above from God that is not.
That's it. That's the video. Now I gotta get home before lightning strikes me and I get superpowers. I hope you go outside and go outside. Close this dang, close this dang window. Go outside. It's great. It's great. Look, there's a crow over there. You know how beautiful that is? Look at this. What even is a garden gnome? I don't even know what a garden gnome is.